Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're tuning in from. Hi, everybody. Larry Wilson here with Michael Cooke, and we are going to be talking about the difficulties of getting modern safety into old school education. And Michael Cooke is the Vice President, Social and Environmental Responsibility at the Jabil Group. But Michael, I've known Michael for a long time with one of the previous employers, but he's done a lot more than just health and safety. And he's worked in administration. He's worked in some really exciting things like mergers and acquisitions. He also has an MBA as well as a Master's of Science. But there's a lot of really, I mean, he's been involved with a lot of things in terms of health and safety, just beyond just the corporate world as well, and outside of Europe, sort of. Europe and Asia regions. Michael, I'm sorry, there's really almost too much in your bio to just go on and on. I don't want people to think that you're a superhero and you can leap tall buildings in a single bound and transfer global corporations into world class single-handedly. Although you've got a pretty darn good track record for it. Anyhow, thank you so much for being on the show and for coming to talk about this.
Real pleasure, Larry. It's good to be on. And yeah, as you said, we've met quite a long time ago, and it's good to be in touch again. So looking forward to this.
I know. I mean, the other thing, everybody, for those of you who have attended any of the expert panels that we have put on over the last year, the whole theme being reality versus theory. And if you recall from the blurb, it said the original intent of these webinars was to provide a perspective or viewpoint that was much more reality versus theory. The idea came after a conference in Berlin. I was talking with a senior vice president of health, safety, and environment for a very large global company. And I was a bit it says here, I commented on the advice the second to last presenter had given. I did not agree with what he was saying. Okay, well, I was actually pretty darn agitated. And because he was talking about 24/7 safety being, and family days and things like that, basically being a waste of time and money. And I had seen many family days. I've taken Safe Start into schools, into youth groups, into apprenticeship schools, sports teams, college championship teams, hockey teams, Olympic athletes. So yeah, I was a bit agitated. And I was talking with Michael, and he just looked at me and said, he doesn't have to live with it, Larry. He's just a consultant. And I went, how perfectly simple. Exactly. So from there on in, we started getting people like Michael who actually have to live with a decision like, should you have zero harm in your mission statement or not? And, obviously you can argue about that, the philosophical merits, the mathematical improbabilities or impossibilities, but somebody actually has to decide. And then I wanted those people who did decide at the leading companies to tell us how it worked, and also to tell us, hey, what trials and tribulations have you had along the way, so that folks who were considering going down that path wouldn't fall into the same pitfalls. And I also had to make a point of telling everybody that this is just what they were doing. It isn't advice. But in the course of this conversation, Michael Cooke and I also started talking about initiatives outside of the workplace and getting, modern day safety into the education system. And so, Michael, I don't know, how much more of a backdrop I should really give you certainly welcome to try to set the stage a little further if I'm missing. But I remember you were talking about some initiatives in Brazil, and you'd also looked at some of the media that we'd produced and said, you know, we may have some opportunities in terms of some schools that we're working with, and then COVID hit, and then you know, the next time we connected, you were now fairly similar position, but with Jabil, and so maybe however you want to go ahead. Well, I don't know what else to lead in with there. So
if I can start, Larry, I'm going to make a confession.
He was a chemistry teacher. I forgot to say. Oh my God, the one thing I
was a chemistry teacher.
He was also a chemistry teacher. So this whole thing is not just coming from, if you will, arm's length. Okay.
And I want to actually tell a little story about being a chemistry teacher, because it's actually very relevant in terms of what we're discussing. I was a newly qualified teacher in any case, and I was with a group of boys, largely boys who were very unruly, and as boys are. And I was trying to impress them a little bit with, some flash bang shows, which usually get people a bit more interested. And chemistry is quite good for that, actually. You know, you can do that. And I had them all around the sort of bench where I was working from, and it was very, very simple. It was just, we've all done it at school, probably. What metals react faster when you put them in water, and some burn with yellow, and some with white, and some don't at all. And the theory was actually that they've learned about reactivity series and stuff. But what has happened actually was that the second one, which wasn't supposed to be that fast at burning, really exploded when I put a bit of metal into the water. And it was a brand new lab actually with a wooden roof on top, and it burnt a black with all the mark on the roof. So I left my mark on that school actually, and actually the head of science didn't sack me, which was a good thing as well. But there's two things the kids learned from that. First of all, sometimes if you don't plan things as well as you should do, things will go wrong, because what I hadn't realized was hot water and cold water pipes run together, and the water in the bowl was actually warm instead of cold, so the reaction was much faster. That's a good teaching point in any case. Temperature makes things go faster. Very good. And the other thing is that the kids all had safety glasses on, and there was a screen in front, and they were quite safe, and I was as well. But they will remember that, I think, as things go wrong, but you need to be prepared for it, and you need to understand why it happened also at the end. So we had a really good discussion about why it had happened. So from my point of view, actually, getting kids to understand risk is important. So going to what you were saying earlier, Larry, you went in my previous company and in my current company, Jabil, we have operations in Brazil. In both of those companies, we support education from 6 to 16 or 6 to 18 at the operations we're in. And there's a very good reason for doing this, is that the less than 50% of the young people get proper education. We want to get good, talented people into the business afterwards. But in the first case, we actually had a school within our factory. The kids would have to walk through the factory wearing safety glasses and the high-vis stuff or whatever was required there. And they had to understand why they had to do that. It was a good lesson for them to learn, actually, that these are big machines, they're dangerous. But we take the right precautions. So really integrating them into that factory life was a very good thing. And some of them became apprenticeships and learned more and more about that as well. So a great environment for that to happen. And sorry, go on.
No, just the scale. How many kids would we be talking about here, Michael?
We're talking about 20 or 30 a year for about 10 years or more. So around 300. In Jabil, we've actually had 1,000 girls go through our schooling system there. And this is specifically actually to give girls an opportunity to study STEM subjects and get coaching and mentoring in those things as well to break that cycle. But the connection here is that we've got factories that are very dangerous, but we allow children to come into the factories in a way that they can start understanding those risks and learning from.
Okay. Was there when they went through to become the apprentices and things like that? I think this would be fairly obvious, but and I don't want to go down the whole culture thing, but was it easier? What were they more? I know you and I've talked about this many times. Is that if this actually could start before you got to the apprentice level, there's what I can tell you is that if you go to 12 or 13 years old, even hockey players, they have not learned to dislike safety. My error, my mistake, my injury, my responsibility, what's the problem? And I'm like, well, by the time you're 21, I guarantee it'll be the windshield wipers, the tires, the road, the other guy, the teacher. But it isn't going to be nearly as easy to start getting the wheels turning in the right direction. So did you find that when those people went in to become apprentices and things like that, things went much better, Michael?
No, definitely, because I think they had learned to respect safety. They didn't know necessarily what all the risks were, I think, but they saw the workforce, taking those precautions, wearing the right PPE, using the right equipment, checking the right things. And we clearly didn't allow them to run around the factory without any supervision. But that was part of what we did do, so they could see the products we're making, get interested in those things, and hopefully come and work for us at the end of it as well, as I said. So it does make a difference, because we talk about creating the right habits, and the habits were to think that if there's a risk, we don't accept it as something that we just go ahead with. We look at it and decide how we can mitigate that. They wouldn't have used those words, of course. But that's the way that they started thinking. And I recently spoke to some apprentices actually in Jabil, and I was really impressed by the fact that we are saying these are 16-year-olds, so still quite young. That they're not embarrassed about safety. they want to be safe, and they have that mentality because we're encouraging it. Is for them to actually assess safety and risk in a positive way, rather than, it's getting in the way of me getting this job done. So lots of, you're absolutely right. The earlier we start, the easier it is, I think, to create those good habits.
Interesting. Now, tell us, if you can, just a bit, Michael, about some of the other schools, or whether with the previous employer or with Jabil, just sort of what's and I know it's like with COVID, and you just got there. Like, I'm not expecting that you've managed to save the world just yet. That would be, but where I remember you telling me about some of the things that you've got on the table, or some initiatives that you've got planned and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things actually that if I have to give you credit for this, but if we can make the youngsters see that as an attractive thing to learn about safety, then we're on a winner. And I think your Boo Boo Bandits thing is actually something that we used, and we advertised that and said, actually to the school, why don't we show this and use it? And guess what? They were fascinated by it and wanted to see more. It's a way of actually, I wouldn't say subliminally, because that wouldn't be correct, but it's a way of actually helping them make the right sort of judgments about risk without spoiling their fun. And I think that's what I like about it, and I think that's what they liked about it as well. And one of the things that we were trying to not say to them is that life is risk-free. I think that's an important thing actually to acknowledge. And with I've got my own kids are much older now, but if I'd said to them, you can never climb a tree or never ski or ride a bike, then that would have been the wrong way. But with creating that way of actually looking at those different types of things that could create the hazards which hurt you, it is a very good observational skill, I think, or risk assessment skill that you, through that Boo Bandits thing, actually create. It's creating that expertise actually in assessing risk.
Well, first of all, thank you. And there's a bit of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, bittersweet irony, but I mean, the Boo Bandits. I mean, I'm very proud of Safe Start, obviously, and what Safe Start's accomplished in industry around the world. But about 10 years ago, I was watching. They're not Boy Scouts. They're the Beavers. They're the age below the Boy Scouts, so they're around 6, 7 years, maybe 8 years old, and they are sitting. They're at the Boy Scouts meeting, but they're in a separate room, and they are watching the Boo Bandits, and it is like tractor beam, like they are just riveted. And I had to accept, like, I remember walking away going, you can say whatever you want, Larry, but that's the best thing you've ever made right there. That's better than, you did it, like, you did a good, it was okay, it's been #1, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you never had adults doing that. You never had that in any of the classes, even when you had, all your mojo going and everybody was laughing and crying and all the rest of it. You never had what you had right there. So that's why I made the next 3, Michael. But the evolution.
Tell me, Larry, if I can ask you something, Larry. Yeah, we found it. It was, the kids really enjoyed it. They also learnt, I think, good stuff out of it, which will help them in their careers in the future as well. I found it quite easy to get our schools in our own factories to use it. But tell me, have you found it as easy as that when you've gone to schools to get them to use it?
Well, thank you. But this is one of the things that I'm hoping to get across here at the show, is that we made stuff that there's an evolution to this. I would love to say it's a painless evolution, but I think we all know that's somewhat oxymoronic, because the way evolution works is you either get really hurt really bad, or you die. And so it's a cruel way of going about it. But we were trying to be able to give things to the schools that did not require the teachers to have to teach or deliver the media. We didn't start out that way. We started out with saying, hey, we've made resources that internal trainers at companies, not professional trainers, not Peter PowerPoint or Tommy Toastmaster guy, but just a regular, as my sister would say, somebody who's skilled trades, a welder, somebody from admin, somebody from finance. I mean, anybody can be a trainer. We've all got stories on the job, off the job. Surely the teachers, with all of their experience, could teach this without a problem. All we need to do is put on a train the trainer for them. And they're like, well, how much time is that? And we said, it's only 3 days. And they said, well, we can't do that. They don't have 3 spare days. And besides that, they're teachers, so they will require that they teach it the way they want to teach it. You cannot actually tell the teachers how to teach anything. This is their prerogative. So here's the question. I know you've heard this before, Michael, but I'll just throw it out to everybody. Okay. We're going to you got to think back to some of your high school teachers here, though, everybody, if you can. I mean, I'm picturing Mr. Ritalik, who we affectionately referred to as the Grand Spruce. I don't know why. But in the wind, his comb over went straight up. I think that's how it started. But nevertheless, picturing the grand spruce teaching confined space entry, working at heights, lockout, tagout, let alone risk assessment, hazard IDs, job safety analysis. I'm not talking, hardcore safety stuff like, some sort of process safety evaluation that you'd give a graduate engineering student. I'm just talking about the stuff that everybody would have to do when they go out and get a job in industry. And you picture some of your high school teachers teaching that material. And now I'm going to ask you, how much money do you want to bet on the success of this whole endeavor? Versus how much money would you bet that this would be just a total colossal failure?
Mm-hmm.
And right now, almost everybody I know is reaching into their pockets and they're pulling out every dollar, cent, euro they got, and they're betting against the high school teachers here.
Yeah.
So we had to actually go like I had to actually sort of say, look, either you're going to give up at this. I mean, we made a business out of it. Mike, our producer, who is behind the scenes, I don't know if he'll show up for us, but he was also a national level freestyle ski coach, which is how I met him with my kids. So I agree with you, Michael, about I don't want to encourage my kids to grow up in a risk-free world. I'm not sure I'd go so far as to encourage your kids for freestyle skiing. Everybody, it's freestyle skiing is not free. It'll cost you a knee or a shoulder or something. I can just about assure you. But again, not on the big jumps. Usually on the medium jumps where they're not paying attention. But that's another aside in terms of the whole thing. But anyhow, I made the Boo Boo Bandits, those 3 new episodes. It was about $1.5 million. And we made those so that we could give them to people like yourself so that they could get them to schools so that it could be implemented without any training required. And it would work if they liked it enough to watch it. And with the first one, most kids would watch it around 4 or 5 times. I had one parent tell me that he has heard it in the minivan at least 11 times. Hard, sharp, hot, and slippery, where are the baby bandits? He said, oh my God, Larry. He said, but, he said, he walks into the kitchen, there's Miss Hot Dot, so, I mean, it worked, right? I mean, the hazard recognition, and, the kids like it, they like the games, all the rest of that stuff. So we actually had to, if you will, find an end around the teachers so that we could still have a chance of getting this into the schools and also to make it a lot easier for the parents at the companies to take it home to their kids. But you can't, I mean, this is media that goes from the first one's 3 to 6, 3 to 7 years old. The next 3 episodes where we introduce Mr. Complacency, Miss Fast, Mr. Tired, and Miss Angry. That would maybe be 5 to, I've seen 15-year-olds engaged into it, but I would say it would depend on whether you've got an old 13 or 14-year-old or a young 13 or 14-year-old. That age, there can be a great deal of range within those 3 years, but it's not something that I would be suggesting for somebody 16 and over who's already driving a vehicle or an apprentice at school. So we've had to do some things where we became the instructors and we got to insist on a certain quality of training standard with those tech school instructors. Then and some of it like we did in Canada, obviously starting off, and then in the a bit around the world. Where all have you sort of been with this, whether it's with Jabil, Michael, or with all of the other folks? How many, I mean, you'll hear a bit from you in terms of around the world, and then I'll show everybody just a couple slides and a couple quick video clips of some of the things that we've done, and then just a few suggestions maybe about if you are going to go talk to a school, how you did it, because everybody in your position that does this, or somebody who's in safety, I don't think they realize how much credibility they have. And so if you go and you take it to the school and they watch it, the very, very high likelihood they're going to say yes. I mean,
no, I think you're absolutely right. Just before I sort of talk a bit more about that, Larry, I've got a question actually about, you mentioned actually that some of the kids watch this again and again. Do you think that some of the parents are subliminally actually learning from it as well at the same time?
Well, I've actually been at workplaces where, like, I've heard somebody in the maintenance department looking over at somebody else going, looks like Mr. Complacency got into your head too. Like, well, because, this is the whole thing, right? Mr. Complacency and his three henchmen, he says, hey, wait till I get into their head and get them to quit worrying, and then you come along and make them rush, right? Or you come along and make them mad. So I'm trying to subliminally show everybody this is how it starts, right? First, you let your guard down, and that'll happen naturally. If you've been doing something for a long time, you're not going to be able to stop it. But then once your mind starts to wander, all it takes is a little bit of rushing, a little bit of frustration, and a little bit of fatigue, or a combination of those things. And that's likely what you'll be thinking about instead of what you're welding right now. Right. So, I mean, I'm hoping, Michael, that, it would come in the back door as well. But I also think that if you have to help teach something to anybody, it's more than just your learning that changes. There's something inside you, I think, that changes a bit.
Yeah.
You have to stand for what you're saying a bit more. And in order to teach it effectively, you kind of have to have that gear change within yourself. And so, one of the things that I've always sort of said is, let's not ask these people to take this stuff home to their families too soon. Safety isn't everybody's favorite subject. And if you feel unsure about what you're talking about, and your spouse thinks that you're the problem versus her, this may not go this may not go very well. So there's a few of those sort of things as well too, like do's and don'ts. But where all else have you guys been? What other schools or?
So I guess we've got schools in Latin America, India, and other parts of the world, but where we've introduced thinking about these things using Boo Boo Bandits and other stuff that we sort of, it's not just one thing, but a number of things. But one of the other areas actually where we've found it very helpful is we do family days at a lot of our sites. And some of our sites actually in Jabil are massive. We have 40,000 people or so. We have families living there, and dormitories and everything else as well. And this is a good opportunity for us actually to, going back to what we said earlier, is if we are showing these actually with the families, and of course the parents are only there because they're looking after their kids, but they're listening in and taking it back. We've done a bit of our sort of training and behavioural changes just through that for the whole family and the workers who are working with us as well. So that's a big number of people we can cover that way.
Wow. I don't know how many people besides myself listening, just trying to, I have never been on a site with 40,000 people. I've been on sites with 20,000, and it's a mind boggling number of people. Are most of them Jabil employees? Are they contractors, or is it a 50-50-ish? Or
we have a core of about 20,000 who are Jabil workers. Of course, all of the people who work there are Jabil workers, but we have people who come for 3 months, 4 months to work and then go somewhere back to where their family is or whatever, or if they brought their family with them, they may stay a bit longer. It depends on that. But the market where we are is we flex from 20 to 50,000 sometimes people, and that's a big challenge on a lot of scale, from safety, health and well-being, mental resilience, as well as just how do you cope with feeding all those people and making sure that they're happy working there as well.
Wow. Well, that's I would love to go there, especially a whole bunch of them have seen the Boo Boo Bandits, and I mean, it depends. My oldest daughter just graduated from university, so she is the sort of star of the first one, and I don't know if she would go with being co-star, or she'd think she was the star of the second one. They're both daughters got conscripted into it, and we filmed this thing in Houston, Texas, in August because they were going to school. And depending on where you're listening in from, Houston, Texas in August is not a great tourist destination. It's usually over 30 degrees, but sometimes it's over 40. And we just happened to hit a few days where it was 47 with the humidex. So if you can imagine being out there in the park in your polyester superhero outfit and makeup and trying to keep your makeup, it was so one good thing about that is that neither of my two daughters really have any aspirations of becoming actresses in Hollywood now that they know what it's all about.
But Larry, have they got aspirations to become safety people?
Well, actually, Mackenzie is helping me right now, and she's been writing the article summary from the expert panels since she just finished school in April. So yes, and the other second son, Mitchell, has been helping me with productions and videos and editing and all kinds of stuff part-time, as he's been going to school for years. So two of the four are maybe going to carry on with it. Michael, thanks for asking. And all of them are like certified Safe Start trainers, and I had them go to public workshops and everything, because like I said, I really think that if you can get somebody to turn around and teach this, even and I haven't built this part into the Boo Boo Bandits yet, I don't think, as well as necessarily we should. And the idea that if you help teach another kid this stuff, if you help show another kid your age how to use the app for anticipating error and rate your state, that I'm not exactly sure how I frame it. I don't think the kids would be interested in knowing that all the successful behavior change processes and programs in the world all focus on this part, getting you to teach it to somebody else. I don't know how interested the 7-year-olds would be in all of that, but I could maybe just say, hey, if you've got a friend and you think it's helped you, here's how you go about doing it, and just do a bit of show them, and show the other kid being happy and liking it and stuff. And maybe that might be enough. Just put something like that on the end of one of the videos, Michael, and get something like that done.
I think peer pressure works, whatever age you are, doesn't it? And the kids who I've seen it. You mentioned the snow activities of Mike, but if a kid says to a friend, actually, I'm going to ski now, and they're not wearing a helmet, do you expect them to feel actually that's something they should intervene with and feel good about it, because they know that if they don't, their friend may have a regret that they're not wearing it. And I think that's there's no resistance to that if they understand what it's about. There's a good reason for doing it, and there shouldn't be any hesitancy in doing it either.
Yeah, they almost, in my opinion, won the tipping point here with the bicycle helmet.
Yeah.
There's a law, but the police obviously have only got will for what the people have will for, and so they didn't quite. It almost went, and then it didn't. With skiing, interestingly enough, because I live out in Whistler, which for those of you who don't know is one of the cool guy ski places in North America in terms of accessible double black diamond steep hills, where if you fall, it'll be the length of a soccer or a football pitch before you stop, or two, right? So there's a lot of if you will, sort of cool guys or cool guy wannabes out here in Whistler, and extreme skiers. And so when the extreme skiers started wearing helmets, the guys who wanted to be thought of as cool as that had to start wearing helmets, or else you couldn't be an extreme skier. And then pretty soon everybody started wearing helmets. And then most of us started thinking, this is actually a little bit better than the hat. It's waterproof, it's light, it's I don't know why I bought it for so long, really. The toque was actually quite itchy. So eventually, the helmet won, in spite of that. I think all of us would agree, hitting your head on snow is always going to be better than hitting your head on the concrete or the asphalt. So if you were only going to wear a helmet for one thing, I think the bike would probably be better than skiing. But nevertheless, we kind of won the war on the helmet thing here. In Europe, are almost everybody wearing helmets skiing?
Yeah, it's only some of the very older generation who don't. The youngsters, I'd say 99, if not 100% of the youngsters wear helmets. It's de rigueur. You have to wear it because it's not uncomfortable, as you say. They've heard about Schumacher and other people who had crashed even with a helmet and hurt themselves a lot. But you know that the speeds they're going at, they like it. It's the older guys like perhaps me who need persuading, though I do wear a helmet when I ski, of course.
Well, I just think I wouldn't want to hold my breath till they're all wearing bike helmets in the Netherlands or in Amsterdam when I've been there. And it's certainly, if there's ever a place where you might want to think about it, that would be one of the places I'd recommend, because it's pretty congested and busy and all. If I can, I'll just maybe show some of the people a couple of just a couple of slides, a few things that we've sort of done, just to give you. This is the 435, if you will, beginning students at this trade school just outside of Manila in the Philippines. And they are all going to be taking Safe Start. And they wanted me to kick this off for the 432 kids. It's about 35 degrees and around 41 with the humidex this day. This is not an air-conditioned room. I'm Canadian, so I was just melting. But so did the HDMI cables. And so there were no screens for the first 90 minutes of this presentation. And I had to do it with a Safe Start card. The kids all did have a Safe Start card for the first 90 minutes. And after it was over, they gave me the wave. So show them the wave, Mike. couldn't really hear it much. And then I think there's a slide there, a picture of the signing ceremony, and this is with Pascal, who is in charge of all the technical schools in the Philippines. And there's the director and assistant director of the school there with me. And then I think the next slide is the graduating class, the first graduating class out of there. And all of these kids come from underprivileged families in the Philippines. So it's just a really cool thing. This is Boo Boo Bandits in Colombia with Paul Crow and Nelson at a primary school. And same thing. Boy Scouts in Edmonton, Alberta. And this was a high school in Edmonton, Alberta. Mike, our producer, and my son Taylor, and Cameron Smith and Hunter Visser all actually did the training for these high schools for a couple of years. And the teachers then sat at the back and were trained, if you will, mentor style. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, providing an instructor while they are paying their own teacher was not a long-term cost-effective solution, and it made it quite difficult to get this thing spread from one school to another. What I thought the difficulty would be teaching the stuff to the kids. This was the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, and we were training all of the technology kids, and we were hoping to start putting this into all of the apprenticeship programs. And the price of oil dropped to more than 50%, and then COVID hit. So that hasn't gone along as well as we'd hoped. And this my old alma mater, Carleton University, they have won the National Basketball Championship in Canada 12 out of the last 15 years. They never did any of this when I played for them. And they start now with first-year students, and then the second-year kids take the critical decision units. And it was from these kids that we actually started getting some of the anecdotal stuff about performance and how, self-triggering in the moment improves your ability to focus and concentrate, but also to eliminate distractions. And sort of the mantra in high performance sport is control the mind, control the moment, control the moment, control the performance. They just added to it with, SafeStar teaches you to control the state so you can control the mind, so you can control the moment, so you can control the performance. Simple things like self-triggering so you don't say something or gesture to the ref and get a technical foul is real easy to see. Not rushing your jump shot and missing it, even though you do want to, have a quick release, is different than rushing it. So there's both of those aspects there. And then, Mike, I think the next slide, if I'm not mistaken, is Suriname.
Mark.
And this was maybe one of the coolest things we did in South America, in Suriname. I'm not sure how many thousand high school tech students they trained. They've been going at it now for, I think, the last 4 years. But we kicked this off in an indoor soccer stadium. And Mike, maybe you could just show them a little bit of the video. I don't know if they can all hear it or not, but they should be able to.
I'm hoping my audio will pick it up. We'll try it here. Let me know.
In the first week of November 2016, a special event took place in Paramaribo, Suriname, an event organized by Cosmos Energy, Suriname.
Cosmos Energy is a United States-based oil and gas company that focuses in the exploration and production of oil and gas. Here in Suriname, we have 2 exploration blocks, both located over 200 kilometers offshore in water depths between 1,000 and 3,000 meters. This is where we're exploring for oil and gas. The reason we're here with Safe Start is to help create a safety culture in the lower technical schools of Paramaribo. And the reason we're doing this is we were notified by Staatsolie in a meeting last year about an unfortunate fatality that occurred in the lower technical school. And Staatsolie asked us if we could help to create a safety culture in the lower technical schools of Paramaribo. And we embraced this request. We've spent a number of months working to prepare this project, and we're now rolling out this project, which will extend over 2 academic years.
Hunter Visser and Gary Higby are the trainers of the Safe Start program in this event. Prior to this event,
It's
Hunter
probably
and Gary
enough,
will
Mike.
also be training teachers so that they can later on.
But they at least did give us the opportunity to kick it off to all of the kids there. And Hunter was 20 years old, and he was presenting to thousands of all those kids at once. I mean, that must have been a bit nervy. Gary's used to presenting to lots and lots of people. I mean, we've spoken together at conferences all over the world. So I don't think Gary was probably a bit nervous too, though. All those kids being the oldest guy in the room. But it went very well, and it's certainly something that I'm proud to have been able to help with, and obviously something that we want companies to know would be happy, obviously, to help you in any of these areas where you can, or where you've been asked to come in and help. Obviously, there's certainly struggle. Well, safety's a struggle everywhere. Obviously, it's not like it's a walk in the park for anybody. Michael, what in terms of just something simple like whether it's taking even the Boo Boo Bandits to an elementary school, or the other, the Boo Boo Bandits to like kids that are in grade 3 and 4. Any from your perspective, anything do's and don'ts or anything? I mean, we've got a ton of questions coming in, so I would like to try to get to some of them for sure. But like the one thing I said, whatever you do, don't turn this stuff over into the hands of the teachers who won't put any effort into the preparation and expect that this is going to go any better than the last time you did some safety training at your company without putting any preparation into it. Only at least you've got credibility. Take that away and it was a nightmare. But other than that, anything that you'd want to talk
Well,
about?
I'd say that the hardest thing actually is to get them get into the door. So, but once you're in, where we've done it, and as I said, we've done it in various parts of the world. It's about actually positioning it as a, if we want people to come to industry. That we were selling ourselves in this. This is a company we want to work for, and one of our values is safety. And if you ever come to visit us, or if your father or your mother is working with us, these is a value we want you to have. And then using that as a way to say, and here's a fun way of learning about some of those key things, and letting it run like that. So I think setting it up like that made it easier, because we had a workforce. Some of our sites are, say, very big, a major employer in the areas often, and many of the people have children in the schools. So there was that connection that made it a bit easier for it to happen.
Yeah, I think that part was one thing I should have asked about. Was that the likelihood is that one of the spouses or partners of one of your employees will work in the educational system, as a teacher or a superintendent or whatever, and so that I don't think we do enough of it. In other words, that should be kind of almost self-contained in it, that if you work in the school system or you work with a youth group like the Boy Scouts or 4-H or the Girl Guides or Brownies or whatever it is, you are welcome to take this. You take this in. If you would like any additional information or more formal permission, please contact Larry at safestart.com, and I'll send you I'll send you a letter from the company saying, you know, by all means, please go ahead and let us know how it went. Send us some pictures, et cetera, if you've got them. But you'd be happy to help there. But I think that's one way, certainly to do it. Have you had any success at all just showing stuff about home safety and 24/7 safety on closed circuit TV within the different companies you've worked at, Michael, or anything like that? Did you use that to promote your family days? And from the family days, would that be another good way of trying to get out to the youth groups potentially?
Yeah, I think the family days were actually one of the best ways, because it's you know, they come into the factory, they see some of the things. You know, so you know, we don't do everything, of course, when they're there, but we show, you know, some of the robots working and other things, and they learn about the dangers of you know, robots from that, and the safety, of course, side of things. But the fact is that in those, it's a fun environment, you know, because there are games and other things going on, and that works very well. But we also work very much in the STEM area. So we work with schools to encourage science, technology, maths, and those sort of things. And a lot of it is around supporting projects. And that's another opportunity then for us to talk about, you know, how we can encompass safety in it. Because yeah, they'll have some great ideas, and then we teach them actually how to assess the risk of doing those things. If they're going to climb up heights to demonstrate something or whatever, what does that mean in terms of safety? So it's not so much, you know, through the videos on site. I think we don't do that so much. It's more the interpersonal, real personal sort of level of interaction.
Well, I mean, the one video that I asked Mike, didn't said, I don't think we're going to need the family day video, but that was, and I don't know if it's, you know, handy, Mike, or not, but they'd have different things that you know, there's a bouncy gym thing. They had a video game trailer. There's food and drinks and water. You know, the sack throwing things, just lots of different stuff. We would have a maze game that we would do it at the family day, and that's basically you just take painter's tape and you make sort of a 90-degree corner sort of maze, and you have to walk along the lines. If you step off the lines, you have to go back to the beginning and you start over. And it's a race, like they time them, and whoever wins typically got either a $25 or a $50 Walmart gift certificate. And if you start walking fast and start running, typically you go off, and the other kids are all the judges. So as soon as your foot's off the line, the kids are all on you right there, and you have to go back to the beginning. And so we get them to do just that one. And then we say, okay, now it's a race, but you have to text "Safe Start is awesome. Safe Start is awesome" while you're doing it. Like you have to text it twice before your time is done. Now, we don't tell the kids you can text it first or you can text it last. Most of the kids start trying to walk and text it while they're walking, and they all walk right off the line. And at the end of it all, I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better at the one place. It just happened to be the plant manager's son who was going last. And he said, you know what? I'm just going to text this first, and then I'm going to go. And he won the $50 gift certificate. And I think that probably did more for teaching those kids that you can't text when you're riding a bike. than all of the commercials and sermons on the mount and warnings and threats from everybody about it. I think, if you can find ways to kinetically prove some of these things to the kids. I didn't come up with this. This was Mike and Hunter and Mike Richards. And what happened was they were teaching kids at the high schools who had been moved along but couldn't read. And they're phoning me and they're saying, Larry, these kids can't read. I mean, they can read signs, but they can't read. And I said, well, you guys, we're not going to be able to teach them to read. Better people than us have tried and failed. But that doesn't mean you can't teach them about rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency some other way. And so they found all kinds of ways, getting the cosmetology kids to do the fingernails blindfolded and then taking photographs, the cooking class blindfolded. So, here's what happens when you take your eyes off task. I mean, some of those things I thought were just incredible in terms of, beyond the classroom methodology for teaching folks. So, tried to bring a lot of that in as well. Anything else, Michael, before there's a lot of questions, so I should probably Joe offered second grade recruitment into the Ouchbusters and gave them lasers to zap the boo-boo bandits, LED flashlights. They were fully engaged immediately. They found the bandits in the classroom. This is ground level OH&S, then trade schools, then union trades, and finally in the workplace. The kids, I was back there the next year and the kids had retained the info. Hey, thanks for that, Joe. Michael, anything else though before, I was going to say, you're going to probably get a lot of questions here. So I don't know if you had any other suggestions for folks.
No. I think actually you covered one of the key points there. It has to be, if we can get them to physically do something and learn from that is one of the best ways of doing it. Now, I'd like to think actually those kids won't just not ride in text. They won't drive in text when they can learn to drive. And if we keep that in there, for that long, then that would have been one of the best things that you could have ever done for those kids.
Yeah, well, and for me, that's what I was thinking. I'm going, look, if you're not going to go from the bike to the car, if we can get you to stop now, you'll stop it. Period, right? Yeah. You can also, crash into something and that'll stop it for you too, usually. No, the school of hard knocks works. It's just, it's the old painful education, right? And sometimes you take, especially with texting and things like that, it's not just you now, so it's like a lot of those things, like so much of this actually was running into roadblocks and finding a way around it. But in the process, we found better ways, I think, in some cases. Any other questions, Mike? What's the best way to get school boards to embrace teaching safe work practices and make the necessary changes to the current curriculum? Oh, well, first of all, I just would like to say that we did manage to actually get between the core units and the critical decision units, 25 hours. We actually managed in Alberta for kids to get a high school credit for taking this course. I mean, we did, and we got a few thousand kids through all of that. But getting the school board to change its curriculum is not for the faint of heart. If you're reading between the lines, it's the equivalent of beating your head against a brick wall. And there's a lot of competing forces out there. There's nobody in the school system that is unaware of how many kids die. I mean, the superintendent in our district told me that she went to 3 funerals. And I said, well, do you think it'll be any different next year? And she said, Larry, you have to let the teachers teach the curriculum. I cannot change that. Mm-hmm. And I said, but they don't teach it very well. And she said, well, I can't change that either. So, and then you get the whole thing that the school board wants the schools to pay for it and the schools want the school board to pay for it. And if you get caught up in that, you will lose a lot of money, I can assure you. But, you know, like I said, the problem is, and this all came to me when I went to this session. It was a forest products safety conference. Makes sense, everybody. It was in the middle of the forest, which means the middle of nowhere in Canada, but a lot of big forest products companies at this conference. And they had a guy from Health Canada who was presenting before me, and he was really quite lively and a great speaker. And he said, you know, with our public healthcare system, what we really need you to do is get a good job when you're 18 years old, work really hard, retire at 65, and then we need you to die the next day, really, because the old people in the healthcare is really costing us a lot of money here in Canada. So if you could, he said, just work till you retire and then die. And then we all kind of laugh. And he said, if you want to know what the biggest cost is, he said, it's accidental injuries that happen from people 18 to 25. We lose more potential years of productive life to the youth dying accidentally than we do to heart attack, diabetes, stroke, AIDS, and cancer all put together. And I was like, I'd never really thought about my life as being a contribution to the tax system, but every year I'm painfully reminded of it. So I don't know why that escaped me. But nevertheless, just the whole idea that there were that many years of life lost, you know, productive years lost because of children and youth dying accidentally. And I tell people this, like, you know, you die on your motorcycle, usually you are between 19 and 25 years old. And if you die of cancer, usually you're over 50. So, you know, there's not as many years. I mean, it's not, you know, I'm not suggesting one problem's worse than the other. It's just the numbers I found to be quite staggering. And then when I found out that twice as many children and youth die accidentally as workers every year, I started thinking, well, obviously, where you need to get this technology is where it's going to do the most good. Whereas my father, who's 91, says, you know, you got the cure for malaria, Larry. Why are you selling it at the North Pole where there's no mosquitoes? So, you know, get on with it where it's needed. And certainly, you know, I think, Michael, the most productive place or the most efficient place to get this, as you said, is before they even get to the, you know, when they're at the age where they can learn these things, there isn't as much resistance, they can carry them with them into apprenticeship and into their first job. I mean, let's face it, the likelihood that somebody is actually going to go and get to work for a company as good as your former employer or as good as Jabil isn't very high. I mean, you don't, there aren't that many companies, you know, out there. Most people, 90% of the companies have less than 100 people. So, you know, they're never going to get any of this stuff unless somehow we get it into the educational system.
No, that's very true. Yeah.
Not that I'd recommend this to everybody, but you know, going right down, like reading through over 500 fatal injury investigation reports, 92% of those people, those workers, worked at a company where it seemed to me probably it would be a stretch if there were 50 employees working at this company. And a lot of them, it was obvious it was a single proprietorship or it was less than 5 people. So, you know, you can only imagine how much, you know, modern safety technology, even basic risk assessment methodologies would have been available to any of these people at all, right? So again, you know, if you're going to make a dent in the SIFs, especially on a national level, it's almost imperative that we at least get this into trade schools or into the school system. Because It's not going to come. It's not going to come anywhere else. I don't know where they'd get it. Any other questions, Mike? I know we're at the hour, so I should be, or past. I should be probably trying to wrap up.
There is one more question that I thought was pretty interesting from Michael Berghoff. I'm just gonna find it and pop it up here, but he was asking
Michael, hi, hello, Michael from Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on, I'll pop it up on screen. Which are the cultural aspects that can promote or make it difficult to teach health and safety at school? Any differences whether you teach boys or girls? Thanks.
Well, if I can start from my teaching experience, yes, there is a big difference. The boys' ability or their risk appetite is far higher. So I think you do need to take that into account. But having said that, the things that engage them is the same largely. So I think you're talking what Larry said earlier. I'm sure that when you were doing that, walking that maze, there were girls and boys equally intent of getting around the circuit, and they both had the same learning experience. So I think we can probably address the cultural issues in the same way. Kids are probably the same appetite for learning wherever you are in the world, in my experience, in any case. But it has to be put a little bit into the cultural sort of context of the country or the region that you're in. And in some areas, of course, the sort of respect for elders is much higher, and you can utilize that more than perhaps in some Western countries. So there are some nuances there, but on the overall, kids love learning, so it's a good opportunity for us to do this.
That was a very nice way of putting it. More so that more respect for older people in some areas of the world, as opposed to just the opposite. Gary, like, would it take Gary with me over to Asia? Being like, he could tell them the moon was green cheese, and they look at him with the experience and the age, and it's almost the opposite. It's almost the opposite, unfortunately. When if people think you're a little too old in North America, they tend to, it goes the other way sometimes. Michael, first of all, thank you very, very much for coming on the show, and also for all the work that you're doing with education, and for taking things beyond the four walls of the companies you've worked at. So thanks very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure, Larry. Thank you.
Yeah, and everybody, the next 2 weeks from today, which is the 24th of June, Gary Higby, who you saw briefly in the Suriname video, and who also basically helped me start Safe Start in North America. He was our first client at John Deere. Gary is one of the most decorated safety professionals in the field in terms of, CSP, EMBA, Safety Professional of the Year, ASSP, Distinguished Service of Safety, or the highest one from the National Safety Council. But Gary has been around for a long time, like longer probably than a lot of in the safety field, over 40 years. So Gary is going to talk about what's not new with me, and that may be actually being touted as new or whatever. But the idea is to help us get to the meat of what is really important and what you really need to focus on as a health and safety professional. And a lot of that depends, obviously, on where you are now. Okay, so, it's fine to talk about utopia, but if you're at the very bottom of the mountain, you probably need an axe to hack through the trees before you need to worry about your snow gear. So please join us, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, 7 p.m. in Europe, where Michael is. So Michael, Thank you very much. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And hopefully you could come back on the show in a few months and we could talk maybe a bit about how it's going once, the COVID restrictions are easing up and we can start moving around again. Hopefully we can have a bit of a, I don't know, progress report, whatever you want to call it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll give you an update on how it's going, and also with some of your help, how it's all going as well too, right? So we could we can hopefully get a bit more of this.
Looks good. Yeah, thanks, Larry.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, and again, Michael, thank you so much. Real pleasure.